Hi everyone, welcome to the muster drill. I'm Scott, and now that the CSO has expired, what's next for cruises? Hi everyone, welcome back. So now that the CSO has expired, a lot of people are wondering and asking the question, what's going to be happening on cruise ships now that they no longer have to follow the health and safety protocols that and the guidelines that were laid out in the CSO by the CDC? But before I start talking about what the cruise lines will and won't be doing in the future, I want to talk about these two letters that were sent by Senator Blumenthal and Representative Matsui to both the director of the CDC as well as the lobby group for the cruise industry known as CLIA. So I'm going to talk first about this letter that was sent to CLIA. Now, there's been a lot of argument, a lot of, conversation about whether or not these two elected officials have ever cruised, or they know what is really going on cruise ships and so forth, because I guess their letters seem a little bit like they're not informed. So I can say this, as a former Senate staffer, I am positive that there is no way that that senator or that representative came up with this idea. Although it has their signatures at the bottom of it, I can tell you that 99% of the letters that go out of, at least in the Senate side, that go out from a senator, their signatures are scanned into the computer when they're elected, and they're like a rubber stamp signature. Now, a lot of times they'll look like they were signed, but it's just the technology. So all I'm going to say about that at this point is I doubt the senator and the representative really had any kind of personal involvement to the degree that they're responsible for the content of the letter. Okay, so they sent this letter to the lobby group CLIA, and they asked some of these, some of these questions. You can see why everybody is upset about, the fact that these two don't seem to know what they're talking about and therefore shouldn't be this involved in the entire process. So for instance, question number one is, are passengers and crew required to be fully vaccinated? Again, this is information that they already know. They already know the answer to that question. I realize they're asking it directly of them because they want them to answer it. They already know the answer to that. Two is, what information about COVID-19 risks and responses are basically shared with passengers prior to their cruise and at the end of their cruise? Well, the answer of that is nothing. There's no cruise line is sending out information saying, oh, by the way, the sailing on the ship that you're about to sail on, the sailing before it had this many COVID cases on it. That information is not going out to passengers, and they know that also. Third question is information shared about COVID protocols or the CDC recommendations and so forth? Again, they know the answer to this. And yes, that information is disclosed on every cruise line's website. At the top of every cruise line's website, since before cruising even resumed, there was a link for you to click on that and read whatever the recommendations were by the CDC. So they had laid all that stuff out, and you could click on that and read it. So, and they know that, but they're asking this question. So you can see, and then I'm not going to sit here and go through all the questions, but the rest of the questions are equally retarded, I think, in my opinion. And they go on to talk about how passengers have been treated terribly on the cruise ships that are in quarantine. And, if you look at my last video, you'll see some evidence of that. I have clients who went to a resort in Jamaica over between Christmas and New Year's. And unfortunately, they tested positive and they had to stay in Jamaica and quarantine in the resort. The resort moved them to a special area of the resort where they were quarantining other guests who had tested positive. It took them a while to get food. It took them a while to get water and so forth. So yeah, so that is happening to some passengers. Some passengers are reporting that. And I don't think that the cruise lines are taking enough responsibility for that. And they're certainly trying to downplay it where it's just been like, you know, a handful. The community is very divided on this. There's always going to be people on both sides. So that is what it is. So, and then of course, the letter that these two, you know, Blumenthal and Matsui wrote to the CDC director, you know, they wrote her kind of a similar letter. So they were really upset at you for not extending the CSO, and you know, we don't believe that the cruise ships can be trusted to you know, police themselves and so forth. I've already talked about this many times. Passengers are no different on cruise ships than they are at Walmart or at the convenience store or any other store that I've been at, grocery store and so forth. There is a growing number of passengers who are not following the protocols. And yes, in my direct observation on every sailing that I have been on, there are no crew members making them. That's not happening at Walmart. That's not happening at the grocery store. That's not happening anywhere. And so it's not happening on cruise ships either. And I think it's less likely to happen on cruise ships because after all, the cruise lines are there to sell you a vacation. You're supposed to have fun and have a good time and relax on vacation. And there's nothing, you know, for somebody who has chosen not to wear a mask or has chosen to not follow those protocols, there is not going to be anything fun, enjoyable, or responsible for that person in the cruise line coming over and demanding that they do something that they've already decided they're not going to do. So moving on. What do we think that the cruise lines are going to do about the, you know, moving forward now that they are not being kind of forced or compelled by, you know, the presence of the conditional sail order from the CDC? And I've already touched on that quite a bit in this video and in plenty of other videos. I believe every single cruise line is going to continue to follow the guidelines and the safety protocols that have been laid out. I do not believe that there will be any cruise line that opts out of any of the existing guidelines or any of the guidance from the conditional sail order. I believe that every cruise line will continue to follow that voluntarily at the very least for the following reason. The Bahamas is still going to have their vaccine and testing negative requirement in place. So any ship that's going to be sailing to any port in the Bahamas, they're still going to have to follow those protocols. Second thing is that, you know, the cruise lines definitely don't want to have to constantly be quarantining everybody. They don't want to have, you know, any more outbreaks on board that anybody else wants to have to deal with being quarantined or have to worry or be concerned about outbreaks on board. So of course they're going to continue to do everything they can. We've been reading that these islands are denying ships coming in that are part of the itinerary, and that is going to keep happening. And of course that is going to happen even more and more if there are cases on board. So again, the cruise lines are going to want to mitigate and minimize or you know, if it's even possible, eliminate onboard COVID cases, just because they're not going to want these cruises to be denied ports. People are going to be upset. There's already a lot of people who are upset about not being able to visit a particular port. Cannot see any cruise line choosing to opt out of any of the things that have already been in place since the restart. And if they do, the CDC still has regulatory authority over cruise ships. They always have. You know, one thing I found out more recently was that yellow status for a cruise ship could be as little as one crew member, but it definitely puts the fact that a cruise ship is in yellow in more perspective, because you're only talking about a single crew member. I think we are all going to have to adjust to what we've been experiencing so far as our new normal. It's not going to be the way it was before COVID for at least the foreseeable future. And if we put that in our minds and we get our minds around that, I think it will definitely make for a more enjoyable cruise for all of us. So I really think that's going to do it for today's video. Thank you very much for tuning in. And if you like this video, don't forget to click that like button. And then don't forget to click the subscribe button. It won't cost you anything. You click it once and you're done, and it'll really help us out a lot. And then don't forget to click the notification bell so that you know every time we upload a new video. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.